2, 1, we're live! Okay, so this is a pair programming together with Alina. We wanted to have a look into the backend testing. Actually, I think as long as none of us is, as long as every one of us is talking German, like can understand German, I would say let's stick to that. Or what's best for you, Alina?
But the thing is,
I'm fine with both.
tonight.
Go with German then.
Oh well, we can also like stick to English if you want, no problem. So let's have a look into your screen, I would say.
What was today?
Do you want to share your screen?
Yes.
Dogma.
So we recently had like a couple of changes for the backend. The backend testing is a little bit difficult, or like the setup is a little bit odd. I have to apologize for this dodgy setup, but it's on its way out. So we're refactoring it, and it should become a lot easier in the future.
Okay.
From Brazil.
Nice.
They're from Serbia.
The backend consists of a couple of things, right? You have the middleware, which is like the Node.js server, but you also have this database. And if you want to do integration testing, you also need some data in the database in order to like make proper testing. I don't know. For example, you want to check the is logged in request. You want to send a message to the server, and you want to know am I logged in or not. And then the backend should check the JSON Web Token, and it should also check if the user exists in the database. So you have like 3 test cases. You are authenticated, everything is fine. Then you're not authenticated because you don't have a valid JSON Web Token and you don't have a user in the database, for example.
Yeah.
At least one of those test cases, you have to change the database somehow, right? Otherwise, you will not be. You cannot like test if the user is in the database or not, right?
Sure.
So, and that's like the catch. So that was the problem that haunted us in the last couple of months. And if you're in a framework like Rails, for example, then everything is just fine and easy and nice and beautiful, because the framework takes care of setting up the database that in order for you to do all of these things. And we had to come up with something on our own. And in the beginning, we made the mistake. I say mistake because now we know better, but back then it sounded like a reasonable approach to have basically 2 servers, right? You have 2 servers running. One server is the server that you actually challenge during your tests, and the other server is only for getting the data into your database. If you open the package.json, you can still find the remains of that setup in there. And then, I mean, remains, like 90% of the tests are written that way. So if you check out test::jest.
Yeah.
By the way, is it noisy? I can also go to another table a little bit further, like a
It's a
couple
bit
of meters.
noisy, but I can hear it fine.
No, that's no problem. I just moved to another location. But if you check out test::jest, then you see. Is it better now? Is it?
Yeah, it's better. Thank you.
All right. All right. Can you just highlight test::jest, line 18?
Yes.
Exactly. If you look how it's implemented, it says run -p erase then something. This run p comes from an npm package which allows you to run things in parallel, right? It's called npm run all. If you want, you can check it out on GitHub. Like, if you're interested what it does, are you?
I think I've seen it before.
All right. So it's so it's running 3 things in parallel. So test :before and then asterisk. So everything which starts with test before, and we have on line number 13 and line number 14, we have 2 lines
Over here.
that will match that. So on one, like we have one server which is running on port 4123, and another one running on port 4001. And I think the 4001 is the one which is which has disabled permissions, because usually you're not allowed to write users and just write into the database straight away. So that's like the dodgy setup. Right, you have one server with the permissions disabled to be able to send HTTP requests in there and like set up the data that you need for the test case. And then you have the actual server. And just thinking about the 3 test cases that I explained to you, if you would have something like a standard set of data, like seats, for example, then you would not be able to test the 3 test cases because you cannot wipe out the database anymore, right? Does it make sense? Have you done backend testing before?
Little.
A little. Yeah, I'm just curious if you know about this problem, if you have ever faced it in another project or something.
No. Not
Yes, I had it a couple of times, and it's always like a pain. Okay, Ulf is dancing. I'm not gonna show it to you. What the heck? Okay, I have to erase my memory, I think. Okay, where was I? Oh yeah, how to get the data into it. And the reason why we don't not just simply have direct connection to the database, I mean, we're on the server, right? So we can also have, like, from our tests, directly go into the database and make a Neo4j connection and then write directly into it. We wanted to have, for example, default values, or we want to encrypt the password. And if we would do it directly, then we would have to do that in our test, and it's always a little bit brittle. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
All right. And now this dodgy setup hopefully is thrown out of the window, right? And all the new tests should follow a different approach. Oh yeah, so after we have 2 servers, the thing that also happens on line number 18 is we run test:/jest command. Test:/jest command is we wait on port 4001, then we wait on port 4023. So basically we will wait until both servers are up and running, and then we do the testing, right? So this is how it works.
Okay.
It is like reliable at least, but it's not transparent. Like, it's not obvious. I think you would have had troubles to understand or get into it if you would have just seen that. Like, you would have such a what the fuck moment, I guess.
True.
So now you know, and that's good that we do the pair programming, because now I think it's easier to understand. And I'm not happy with it. Like, I want to stress that this is not the ideal solution. It's just a lot of overhead. It's slowing down everything. Doing these HTTP requests, like seeding your database through HTTP requests, is, I think, inherently like a bad thing. And if I think of Rails, for example, we have helpers like FactoryBot that set up data for you for test purposes. I just want to bring this. This is like how testing works. You bring the application or the software into a state that's like the test setup, and for that you need the factories. All right, now the new fashion. There's an example how you can write a backend test in server spec.js. Actually, it's on the left. Exactly. That's like this is quite new. Do you have git blame?
I don't know.
I can like do git blame, and then there's a column popping up on the left, and I can see who wrote it, when did he or she write it. This can have like a valuable information, because you see also the git commit messages.
Yeah.
Guys, could you be a little bit quieter? Just a little bit. And okay, so maybe the menu has it. If like you're using Atom, and I'm pretty sure it has a menu item if you in the top bar, you know. Or you can say, or maybe in this, yes. So view, maybe view. SCM usually is source control something. Okay, fair enough. That something with Git opens. You have changes. What does that mean? The local changes, right?
Yeah, that's local changes.
Okay, source control. Sad, because git blame is actually like really valuable information. Like if you ask yourself, why is this line of code here, then you just take git blame, and then you know who you can ask. and why is it there, and when was it
And
written.
when it was added, yeah.
That's sometimes
true.
really so I can spoiler for now. I'm gonna spoiler you from like what time we're talking about.
Okay, I'll set it up.
And so I go to backend. I can also share my screen if you want. Share. Can you see something?
Yes.
So what I do is I go to, I don't know, it's here. And I say git blame, and then boom. So I can see the git commit, which is nice because I can like copy paste it, and then do something like git show and get a detailed view of it. And the message, which can also sometimes has meaningful information. Like if your coworkers write something meaningful in there.
Yeah.
I'm also encouraging people to write like reasons why you did something into it. Like that's not in the code. Like that's not in the diff. Like the reason why you did something. But it's fairly new. It's this month, like 13th of July. It's quite recently. So yeah, that's good.
Okay, great.
Now back to your screen. And if you scroll to the very top, I actually put in some comment even, like it's for demonstration purposes. Doesn't really serve a purpose because the resolver is sufficiently tested. But it's like showing you, it's giving an example how you can use Apollo server testing. Like on line number 1, we have Apollo server testing. If you want to test the backend, then I would definitely put that into Google or your search engine, your favorite search engine. And you should find documentation for it.
Okay.
And Apollo server testing comes with something that's called create test client. And then you have also create server, which comes from us, from this file server.js. And I would now actually also have a look into server.js just to see, okay, what is create server? Create server on line number 21 is a function, and it takes some options, and it's just it's returning something of type Apollo server, right? On line number 39, it's assigning the options on top of the defaults, like it's merging it, and then it's like creating a new instance of Apollo server, and then also more things happening. So there's something with Express. So that's like the strange thing here. You have like the server, which is of type Apollo server, but then you have also app, which is an Express app. And then what the heck is going on there? App use Helmet, so that's Express. App use Express static public, so there's like a publicly served static folder for images, I guess. And then this really strange API here. You have the server of type Apollo server, and then you apply middleware, and then you give it an Express app, and then you say path /. So I think this is mounting the Apollo server at the root node. Does it make sense? Usually, like the default, I think it's GraphQL, like /GraphQL, and this one is mounting it at the root node.
Okay.
And then you return both. So create server returns a server, which is of type Apollo server, and an app, which is the Express app. And an index.js next to it, you can see how the Express app actually boots up the Express app on a port of your choosing. And then you have your HTTP server. And exactly that is what you don't want to do in your test. You don't want to run the entire server. If with Apollo server testing, you just have the Apollo server instance and you don't need the Express thing, right?
Okay.
But everything should almost behave in a similar fashion.
Okay.
Right. So if we have a look into the server spec, what we do here is we test the isLoggedIn GraphQL query. And in the before each, we set up our server as follows. So we use create server. It's returning our server instance, and we making use of that. Like we say const server, and we want to use it later on. And what we put in there is we put in the options thing, right? And the options in our case have just the context method. The context method is used in the actual implementation to get the JSON Web Token out of the request. Like if you send a header with the encrypted user to the server, then the server tries in this context method to like decode the JSON Web Token, get the user, check if the user's in the database, and so on and so on. So basically, this here is a mock. Like we have the user, and we just have a function that returns an object containing the user. That's it.
Yeah.
So whatever the user is, we'll decide or we'll define if you're logged in or not. If user is defined or anything that's not undefined or null, then you are logged in. I think this will be the effect of it. And this create test client, the only method that comes from Apollo server testing directly, is used on line number 24, and it needs the instance of server, like the Apollo server instance. And then we have another thing which is called query, which is probably used further down below. Oh yes, so Windows 7 is returning it. Return query, yeah, beautiful naming here. So the method is called query, and in the options hash, another key is called query as well. But this query is the actual GraphQL query, like curly brace is logged in, like the string. All right, so just keep that in mind, not to confuse yourself with it.
I'll try.
All right, so does it make sense up to now?
It does.
All right. So it returns false. When exactly? It returns false just like that. Like exactly. If user is not defined, then of course it should return false because it's like the context is returning a user object, but it's not defined, so it should be false. And when authenticated, and there you have you assign user, and suddenly the context method will return something that is not falsy. And suddenly you have is logged in true. So it's the server is responding with is logged in true, and that's actually nice. Like it's so much easier if you run this. You don't have to set up this bulky mess with the two servers, and you don't have to wait until like something is listening on those two ports. So apparently much nicer, isn't it? Bye.
Yeah, so far.
Yes, and that's what I like everyone to do. Like from now on, we're not bound anymore to the old setup where we see data through the server itself. We can actually directly write to the database. And we recently made use of a library called Neodi, and Neodi is something like a R mapper for Neo4j. Do you know what an R mapper is?
No.
Do you know what a relational database is?
I have an idea.
It's basically a database with tables.
Yeah.
Right? It's called relational database. I think 20 or 30 years after its invention, it's not really a relational database. It's a table-based database, I would say. And we have a new participant, Hugo Campos. Hello, Hugo Campos. Hello, hello. Can you speak? It's Alina and me. My name is Robert. We currently cannot see or hear you. You're muted. Now you're not muted anymore. Now you're muted again. And you're not muted. What's going on? I think you have problems with your microphone. Hello. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. I was just checking. I was checking Agile Ventures. So I'm just here, just curious. I'm not sure if I could be of any help. Just anyway, we'll be checking if I can help.
Of course, I think you will be of great help, and if not, we are of great help for you because you can learn something about GraphQL. Are you interested in GraphQL?
Just a little. I'm just checking Agile Ventures in general.
Yes. So Agile Ventures is a community for online learning, and Alina, I didn't tell you. Like you knew you got into us. Like okay, so this project. No more. I'm confused. Alina's probably confused. So I'm working on an open source project called Human Connection, which is also in Agile Ventures, which happens to be this online learning crowd platform. And if we do pair programmings at Human Connection, we also share them on Agile Ventures. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, cool.
So Alina, that's the reason why we suddenly have a new listener, which is Hugo, and we love that, Hugo.
Yeah.
We love to share our knowledge.
Thank you.
And yeah, so Human Connection has a backend server, and this backend server is exposed through a so-called GraphQL API. GraphQL is a substitute for REST. It's similar, but much better. And we're testing now. We are writing a backend test for it, and we're using a library called Apollo Server Testing. Apollo Server is an implementation or a framework to rapidly build GraphQL servers and clients. All right, now let's get back to topic. Bye.
So, bis morgen, mein Bester.
Bis morgen. Yeah, I have some friends here. All right. Okay, now I have to get back to topic. Alina, are you still? Do you think it's going well? Do you have questions? Are you confused? Too much at once, maybe?
No, it's good.
Maybe you can like change this test and just see it failing. Basically, maybe you want to run it first.
That's a good point.
Let's check out the package.json, see how you can run. I think I added one more script, which is like running it without all the additional setup. I think I called it Jest, and apparently it's in another. Yes, it's another pull request, and it's not. It hasn't reached master. So create a new. Just create a new script. Basically, copy everything from test :jest cucumber command. Sorry, this line number 15.
Okay.
And just remove the waits because we are not waiting on any server anymore. Does it make sense what we do right now?
Yeah.
All
I
right.
still have to wait and see to fit it all together.
Yeah. So this wait is certainly not required anymore. We just run Jest. And we have to give the script a new name because test :jest command is already taken.
What do we call it?
I called it just Jest because Jest is still available.
Without
it's like a temporary name which you can use if you know, okay, the test I'm going to run is compatible with this new setup, you know?
Okay.
Like all the other tests will fail because there will be no server listening, and then all the HTTP requests will go into Nirvana. But this test should work, right?
Okay.
So Jest is fine. That's perfect. And now you can say yarn run Jest and give it then the file, the path to the file that you want to run. In this case, I think it's source/server.spec.js. You have to look it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's in source. Fine. This is a mess, but
No, this is not a mess. Looks very, very familiar to me.
yeah.
What operating system are you using?
I'm on Mac.
On Mac, nice. Okay, so you're using Tmux or something?
This is iTerm.
iTerm. Okay, so iTerm is having those tiles.
Yeah, you can use Windows as well, but I prefer tabs. Although I've never had 6 open at the same time. So
yeah, well, in our project you have to start a lot of services and you need a lot of terminals. There will be even one more in the future. Like we have something where you can interactively test components in the browser.
Oh, great.
Like separately from the rest of the application. And yeah, but it's adding one more script to the front end, and yeah. Anyhow. Yeah, you want to run the server spec, and you don't need anything for it. Like nothing should. You can also, if you want, you can verify that it's not depending on the server by killing all those backend processes. If you want, if you don't believe me, it's always good. It's always good not to believe me, right, Matt?
Yes.
Yes, Matt is nodding his head. He says it's not good to believe me.
So I'll kill it.
He told me we could.
Do I need the database?
Say it again.
Do I need the database?
That depends. That depends. I think in this particular test, there are no database calls, but that's a really good question. That's a really good question, Alina. You really paid attention because we might write a test where we directly write to the database, right? The Apollo server still works as expected. It's just not a HTTP server anymore. Like it's controlled in a different way, but it's still accessing the database sometimes.
Okay.
Right? That's a really good question.
So I'll keep the database, but I killed the backend and now running the test.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's better.
There we go. It works. Nice. And it's fairly quick. I mean, if you run the backend tests, it takes a while, right? So you have to wait until all the servers are up. This creates a long feedback loop, right?
Mhm.
If you want to like just change something and then run yarn test.js and then wait for the servers to come up, it's just not so nice for development. And removing that will like also remove a bit like a burden from us. Yeah. Honestly, I'm really happy that we get rid of that. Like, I thought in the beginning it was like it is like a problem, but it just couldn't find a solution for it. Right now with this factory thing library, we actually have a solution for it. Like we're not dependent on the server anymore, and it's like easy. And I found out how we can use Apollo server testing. It's like amazing. All right, so now break something.
Break something. Does the user need an ID?
I don't know.
I'll just try with a name instead.
Mm-hmm. Are those still quite a little bit lengthy? Aha. All right. Now what happens? So errors. So you get a different response. Like it's now is logged in false for something where it's expecting to be true.
Yeah.
So great. Well done.
Apparently, we do need an ID.
Yes. Yeah. I would say that's pretty much proven now. And if you want, you can. If you're interested, you can also try like check the resolver for is logged in. What is it actually doing? It like understand why it's needing the ID. Oh no, we lost Hugo. Oh no. Maybe he was just bored.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want, are you interested to see how is logged in is implemented, and to see the reason why an ID is required? Maybe.
Maybe not right now.
All right.
Because it's already a lot, and I want to know how to use this.
Yes, exactly. So let's continue on then with our request for writing backend tests. As a good software developer, you copy and paste a lot of things, right? That's what we do most of the time. Right, Matt? Wolfgang? Copy paste. We love it. Just copy paste from Stack Overflow. There's also a book just dedicated to copy and pasting from Stack Overflow. If you
There it is.
Yeah, it's a parody, but I love it anyways. Let me Google it. Copy paste from Stack Overflow. It's right. One of my favorites. Right after How to Exit Vim. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Open image in new tab. This is it. Where's the chat window? Where's the chat window? There's the chat window. So this is the picture. Essential copy and pasting from Stack Overflow.
Running. I mean, it's like a server, you know?
Beautiful. I like the cover image.
Yeah, these are the O'Reilly cover images. Do you know those books?
Yeah.
Now, here it's called, oh no, it's actually called O'Reilly. Really? Because usually the parodies usually call it O'Reilly.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that. Okay.
So copy pasting from Stack Overflow is awesome. Copy pasting from your own code base, also
Even
really
better.
great. So you could, for example, I don't know, copy the entire file and put it somewhere, like put it next to your, what are you trying to work on?
I'm working on the social media tests, and I'm still using the old structure.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But no, it doesn't matter. Most of it was copy pasting.
Yeah, I think Matt is now leaving this room.
Are you going to stay in Potsdam?
Yes, I'm going to stay in Potsdam. You're going back to Berlin?
Yeah.
All right.
We'll have that kind of.
Do we see each other tomorrow?
Yeah,
for sure.
Do we? Is Paula tomorrow here also? Like,
no, I don't think she'll be here tomorrow.
she will stay in Berlin.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think so.
I mean, we can still meet up in Berlin if you want
Yeah,
tonight,
we're going
because I'm
to-
free.
We're going to
Yeah,
a tab
yeah.
takeover, I think.
We are meeting Alex and Ulf later.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. That's what I was asking.
So
Yeah.
Good.
let's
Have
be in
fun.
contact.
Just send me a message and
Yeah,
then.
or ring us.
I'll
If
send
you're
you a
ready,
message
yeah,
with my
just
number.
ring us.
All right,
please,
nice,
and then we're
cool.
talking. Where's
Ground floor, that direction,
Okay.
and on the right. Have you been there? Yes, you've been to
Yes,
the kitchen,
I
right?
went
So you
there,
know the
yes.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Good.
Bye bye, Alina. Ciao, ciao.
Bye. Have fun.
Nice day.
So she said bye. I'm having headphones, but she
Yeah.
said bye.
Yeah, okay.
That's so funny.
Yeah, my speakers are also broken, so I couldn't even unplug it and let them know. So anyway.
It's okay.
So you're still using the old way of doing it, but I hope it's not too
Yes.
difficult to refactor it.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, this client request thing and so on, this should more or less be easy to refactor. I mean, if you just compare it with the server spec.js, it's the same. Like, you also say await and then expect and then some promise. And wait, okay, I call it action here. So it's just a method that you can call which returns a promise. But should be pretty much the same. And it's returning the data. So should be easy to refactor. Should we do the refactoring first?
Yeah, just a second. So what I was struggling with and what is not working right now are these tests
Yes.
where I'm trying to log in,
Yes.
or I log in as one user and I create a social media. And then I try to log in as another user and change this social media, which of course shouldn't work, but it's working. And I saw that you do it differently in the comments and posts with a second factory instance. And
Yes.
I found it very confusing and had no idea what to do really. So that's why I requested the pairing session.
Again, like the factories are just broken, inherently broken, because even if you send HTTP request and your server is unauthenticated, if you create a comment, no, just easier. If you write a post, then the post will be associated with the currently authenticated user. Right? So even if the permissions are disabled, you still need to know, okay, who's the author then? Like, and then you have to do all these things. Like, you have to create a user, which is going to be the author. Then you have to log in as the user. Then you have to get a client, log in as the author, and then set up the post. So yeah, then you become the author of this post. And that's like the problem. And I thought in the beginning, let's write the factories in a way where you can make this nice declarative way of having like this factory object, which can be logged in, and then you can create resources, and suddenly those resources will be created with you as the owner. So I thought in the beginning, yeah, maybe this is fancy and it's nice, but it's like, I can tell, like, especially for a beginner, you have another what the fuck moment if you if you read it and then you're like, what? Yeah, it's all about just getting, like, associating a post with an author, right, through HTTP requests. And this whole thing is just not the right way to do it. It's better if you have something to set up your factories, and in your factory you can say, hey, I want a post, and I want this post associated with this author, right? It's much easier.
Yeah.
And we use it somewhere, and we use a framework called Neodi. Maybe it's easier if you just check out the website first. So just type in Neodi, npm, and then Neo4j. I think this should be enough to find it. npm and Neo4j. So it's like an OR mapper for Neo4j. OR stands for Object Relational Mapper. Relational because it's referring to relational databases. Since Neo4j is a graph database, you could say it's like an OG mapper somehow. And it's like a glue code between your application layer, like JavaScript land, and your database. And it's just a convenience thing for you to, like, create resources. And you can also use it to, like, set up the data that you need in your test. You just get this Neodi instance, and it knows about like models. In this case, we have the model movie and we have the model person. And in those models, you can define how is like one person related to a movie. Right? You have a person and it has an ID, which is of type UUID, and it's a primary ID apparently. And then you have a name, and the name is a string. So that's the person. Fine, fair enough. Where's the movie?
I'm not sure it's in here.
I'm not sure either.
Since it's just an example.
Yeah, but they shouldn't have an example with a relationship. Scroll down a little bit, maybe. What? Seriously? They don't have an example for a relationship?
There.
There we go. So this is how it works. So you can say, okay, this attribute is of type relationship, and it's the schema definition, as you would say, is down below in the section eager loading, and you have like a relationship called acts_in, and then you have to say, okay, it's of type relationship. So relationship is a type, similar to scalar types like string, number, date, whatever. And then you want to know, okay, is it which kind of node is it targeting? So it's a targeting node of type movie, because that's interesting. I mean, you can tell Neodi to add acts in and then give it not a movie, but a house, right? A person acts in a house or something, and maybe this doesn't make any sense. And then Neodi would come back with and shout at you, hey, you want to set a relationship with something it's not supposed to have a relationship with, right? You're not supposed to have a relationship with a house. And okay, and then you give this relationship, also interesting, like you have type, target, and then relationship. And this is like the label type of the relationship. Like, so you can have in JavaScript, give it a different name from the relationship in Neo4j. For simplicity, please always call it the same.
Yeah.
And then you can say, is it like an outgoing relationship or an incoming relationship? You can have like author. Then you would say, from the point of view of a post, the author is an incoming relationship. Or you can say you have a person, or like in our case, a user, and many posts written by that user, and then you can say written by. And this would be an outgoing relationship. They can have like they have two options here, in and out. And optionally, you can also add properties. So you have properties on relationships. An example in our case would be emotional relationships. You know those emotional reactions from Facebook where you can say it's funny, sad, angry, or whatever. Then you have one relationship, and then the property, is it like fun or sad, and so on.
Okay.
Depends on your personal model.
Yeah.
But this is how it works. And if you look it up, we have those models also, and I think they're located in backend source models.
Models, probably.
So not all of them are in there.
Few.
Not all of them are in there, but at least we have the user already. So we are currently in a refactoring of the whole backend code. We want to put as many models as possible under control of this OR mapper or OG mapper, as you wish. So you can use it because you're lucky. You want to create a user, it's already there. Oh, but you're also unlucky because you want to create a post, and the posts are not yet there. Oh.
No, it's not a post, it's social media.
Oh, social media. Okay.
Link.
But you can write a social media model and then connect it, right?
Probably.
So,
Hopefully.
but you can see we have a lot of attributes like actor, the name, cover image, deleted, disabled role. Some of them are enum types, some of them are Boolean types, some of them have a default value, some of them explicitly allow null values. Then you have relationships, in and outgoing. You have a lot. Like, wow, it's like a massive model. I mean, it is a big model after all. All right. Now, you want to create social media. So I would just recommend you to also copy paste and probably empty model into it, maybe from the
Or
example.
maybe a smaller one at least.
Yeah, maybe something like that. Yeah, just copy that. Call it not email address, but or new file. Yeah, yeah. I would always use capital camel case. I think it's called Pascal case. So the first letter is capital, and the rest is just like camel case.
Yeah.
Social media, excellent naming, perfect. So what is a social media after all? Is it like a URL?
Yeah, it has the URL and an ID.
All right.
And otherwise, I'm not sure.
So is it possible to have the same social media, like the same URL twice?
It shouldn't be.
All right. So we could actually use this, like the URL as the primary ID, no?
I guess so.
A primary ID is like the identity. Like there will be no two different things with the same ID. Like that's the agreement here. Like this is a promise. And the database can then like put an index on the primary ID to find it, for example. In case where you can be 100% sure that some value of your object is unique and it will never be the same for two distinct objects, you can make this a primary ID. In the case of a social media URL, I would make the URL the primary ID, because why you would use another ID, like a UID, for something that is saving something already unique. And we do this, for example, with emails. We also don't want to have two different email objects in the database.
Yeah.
So on line number 2, you can see that we have an email, type string, primary, that's making it a primary index. You can do additional things. For example, the lowercase will always transform it before saving it to the database. That's probably not what you want, so it doesn't really matter.
Lowercase? Well, maybe I do.
I'm not quite sure. Are URLs case sensitive?
I don't know.
In case, let's
we can remove it.
Yeah, and it's certainly not an email, so we don't need an email validations.
Like URL validation? I think there is.
Oh yes, there is. Exactly. Yeah, you can check out the documentation on the web.
Yeah, the docs.
I think it's almost it's already in there. Oh, that's a different thing. You have email validation in the front end, but we just started with data validations in the backend. So if you check out this framework Neodi, it has the validations options in there.
Okay, that's what you mean.
Exactly. So if you scroll up, there you have it. So for strings, we have
email URI.
Yes, URI is the one. And the validations come from another framework, which is included in this one, which is called JOI. JOI. Exactly. So nice. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Verified ad, probably we don't need that. Nouns also not required here. Line number 4 and 5.
Yeah, I'm not sure we need created ad.
I'm not sure either, but it's in the code base and we save it for all the records, and so yeah, I think it's okay. It's created on the fly, so it has a default. If you don't pass in your created ad, Neodi will take care of it, which is also nice, right? We don't have to supply default values anymore. Like we don't need to use a middleware to create default values, which is clumsy and quite an overhead. And we have belongs to. And now it's your choice how you want to label that relationship. What's the name of the relationship between the user and its social media?
I think in the database what it says is owns.
Owns. Then we would rename it to owns.
But then in this case it would be owned by.
Owned by, also possible.
But we could also call it belongs to, or I mean,
Yeah, but if you can maybe like I like specific namings. Of course, it's also not really specific. Owned can be used for many things. Anything that might help another friend of yours who's like reading your code and is trying to think, okay, what did Alina do there? Like he or she is doing git blame and then sees your name and then who wrote this model? Like, what did they thought of? Like, what does it mean? This is what I have in mind when I'm having this naming problem.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to be as helpful as possible to someone. All right, direction out, owned by, is direction out if it's owned by a user and you're currently in the point of view of a social media?
Then it's in.
I would say so, huh? I mean, you can say owns, but then you can also define the relationship on the user model. And then you can say direction out. And then you don't say owned by, but owns.
Okay, so we only do one of the two.
You can also have both, but definitely you just need one of them. If I didn't need it, I usually define it just once on one of the sides. But
okay, but then maybe it would be a good idea to decide it for all of the different types, because now user has a few relationships, outgoing and incoming. But then email address has a relation to the user, which is defined here.
Yeah.
Social media, finding it here as well. So
yeah. It's like a little bit inconsistent and not really decided where relationships should be stored on the incoming or on the outgoing side. Honestly, I mean, we're just starting with this, and we don't have so much experience so far. But yeah, maybe just have, if you have a model which also has like a long list of relationships, maybe you want to put the relationship where it doesn't have so many relationships. I guess maybe that's a good idea.
Maybe
it's a little bit more specific, because which file would you open if you're looking for social media?
Social media.
Then just put it there.
Okay.
There we go. You immediately define it also as eager. Eager will mean if you get the social media, immediately have the user with it, and without making another database call.
Okay.
Which could be beneficial in some cases. Yeah, right. Now, one more thing. There's a file called index.js.
Yeah.
And in the index.js, we have explicitly added each model. Why? I would love to have an index which just gets the entire content of this models folder and just requires it. But what you can use for it is called the FS module. And the FS module is server-side only. And if you want to use these factories in your Cypress tests, which are like full-stack browser tests, then you're only allowed to use frameworks which are not only server-side, but also browser compatible. And then things get dirty. So the easiest solution is not to use FS and simply require all the files manually. And that works. That's browser compatible. Good. Social media.
Okay. So
and now you can set up your data with Neori.
Cool.
I think you can like copy paste code from the users spec. I think we have it there. Not this one, the schema users resolvers user spec.
Schema resolvers. Users.
Yeah, so there's the factory. Okay, we don't use it here. We still use the factories here. What about registration spec, maybe? Yes, line number 11. There we go. So this is the instance, like the Neori instance, and somewhere in this file we also use this instance to set up data. Like you can copy line number 11 and line number
4, I guess.
4, yeah.
Oh, and I mean for adding a social media test.
Well, you could, like from
no?
Rails, I'm used to have those model tests where you like test validations and things. Like really low-level unit tests. But in your case, you want more like you have an integration test because you want to test the entire server, right? You want to test the server with
this case,
multiple models and the database involved. So it's fine. Yeah, yeah. You can put it there, and also get this Neodi instance. So the Neodi instance has all the information required for opening the database connection. You don't have to worry about it anymore, which is great. It also has the information about all the models, right? Because if to make like sense and tell you, hey, you try to connect things that are not supposed to be related, it needs to know what are the allowed relationships, right?
Yeah.
And this is also in this Neodi instance already. Factory and Neodi can live side by side because they don't know anything from each other.
Okay.
Right? Sometimes you have this like really odd test case where you use both. Like sometimes you make a HTTP request to set up data, and in another test case you directly access the database. And yeah, it's what's happening if you refactor the entire code base. Like sometimes you have this dangerous in between state.
Yeah.
And then for a short time you have like a lot of confusion for it. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Now you have the instance, and you can try out like the registration spec will probably also like create users, I guess. Hopefully. I can see factory. No, where's the instance being used? Can you? Yeah. There, obviously, and there. So we use it to get data. Like we want to check, have there been any invitation codes being sent, and we get the first invitation code.
I'll check if there's anything else.
This is also just reading from it. Okay, interesting. By the way, on line number 210, there's an example how you can write directly, like how you can also write Cypher with the instance. So you don't need to create the session yourself. This is all done, which makes the code shorter. And this hydrate first. Oh yeah, that's also really lovely. If you have a database connection and you return, for example, inviter, like in 211, you have a strange and complicated Cypher statement, and in the end you return inviter. If you would normally have this database connection, the only thing that you get back is a plain JSON object, just some properties, and that's it. So you cannot do anything like give me you have the user and give me its social media directly, right? And to make this thing a Neodi node, like a instance of a class that comes from Neodi, you have to use the instance and then .hydrate first, and then whatever is in there is like the result from a database session. So result is 210. Yes, that's the result of the database session. Then you need to tell it, okay, what's the name of the returned thing that you're interested in? Oh yeah, and you also need to give it the model name. And this is how you do it, like say instance.model and then user. And then Neodi knows, okay, we have this thing of type this model. It's called inviter in the database statement, and here's the result of the database call. And then you get in this case, hydrate first will give you the first record. You can also have like many. Then you would say hydrate all, I guess. We would have to look. But does it make sense so far?
Yeah, that's cool.
It's always a little bit complicated, but other frameworks are much nicer to use. For Neo4j and JavaScript on the backend, there's not yet existing like really easy to use frameworks. We are kind of doing the pioneer work here, trying out all these things and finding good patterns, and yeah. Anyhow, so we don't see how we can write to the database here. So I would try yet another.
But we had it in the server spec, didn't we?
There's
no,
we just mock the user. Maybe just search for. Do you know git grep already?
No.
Git grep is amazing. It's like a super quick search through your entire code base. You can use it on the terminal, or you can. Some editors also have the option to use it. I don't know if Atom
I
immediately.
just switched from Atom to Visual Code, so I don't really know.
Oh, this is not Atom. I'm sorry. Like
no,
it almost looks like it. All right, but on the terminal, I can tell you how it works. You just say git space grep. So grep is from the old days. No, not grab, like English grabbing. Grep, that's what Donald Trump did, right? Yes, you remember? No, grep, exactly. GREP. It's short for global regex print. And then you just give some what?
So we're looking for
instance.create. If it gets confused because the dot is a magic symbol in regex, then you can surround it with quotation marks. But just use it now, like
Okay.
this. So now you get all the files where you have exactly this word. So
we do have it in registration, actually.
oh, nice. So we create an email address
Email
there.
address.
So just say instance create and then the name of the model and then
And
some arguments. And all the arguments that you don't pass into the the instance, they get, if they have a default value, they get the default value. And if it's required and you don't pass it in, then you would at that moment get a validation error. But yeah, let's create a user, for example. Instance create user.
In here.
Yeah. We create invitation codes and we create email addresses. Probably we can also create users like that.
Here's a user.
There we go. So args in this case, where does args come from? That's not the test, by the way. It's registration.js. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we can use the same thing in the test. So args is something which we don't know yet, but we can just define it ourselves. Probably we can even create a user without any arguments, like just get a random email address or something. So I don't know. Let's try it.
Possibly, I don't know.
We have already some user params there, like the owner params and the user params. We can use that probably.
We can try.
Anywhere where you say factory create in the user, then you can replace that with instance.create. Maybe you can see like a reason why I called it .create, because most of those factory frameworks use the same API, like something then .create in order to set up data. Yeah.
Okay. Oh no, you don't do that.
So now you have just the user. And what's the role of the user? Like, is the user the one that's going to be the? No, that's not going to be the user, the owner, right? It's going to be the one that is like making the request. You could now this context method. I think this would be the place where you would add the user, right? Does it make sense? If you think of the server.spec.js.
You mean like we did here?
No. There's the server.spec.js.
Server here.
Exactly. So we have this context method on line number 18 to 20 something, and we return user. And I think that's like the user, like that's us. Like we are making this request, like we are just pretending to be authenticated, and then you can return that user in this context, right?
Yes. But what else do we need to set it up? I mean, in the case of creating social media.
So what you would try to test, like create social media, and then you say unauthenticated should always like throw authorization error, which is fine. And if you're authenticated, in the authenticated before each, I would create the user.
You mean like what we did here?
Yes.
Or
I would move line number 56 to line number 70 something, 78, 70.
In here.
Yeah, and this await login, that's not necessary because this is a method that does a request, and we don't want to make a request anymore. You can remove that, and you can also remove the 79. The 79 is the GraphQL client that we also don't need anymore.
Mhm.
And also this const on before user. I would remove that one.
Yeah.
And just assign it. And somewhere up there, define the user with a let. Probably at the very first thing. Yeah, there, it is already defined.
I
Because
just put it there.
yeah, if you now copy from server.spec.js the setup for starting the server, basically everything from line number 15 to 29.
16, because we're already
15 to 29. That is setting up the server. Mm-hmm. And you can put that somewhere at the very top of this file. Yeah, no, you could remove the owner, but that's fine, I think.
Yeah, we don't need it for now.
So if you return the user object in 60 and you didn't define it yet, then first you will be unauthenticated. Once you define it, you will be authenticated and you will be that user, right?
Yeah.
And of course, you want to remove 66 or replace it with the actual query that you're trying to do. I think the queries are on line number 40. No?
You mean these two?
Yeah.
Well, they are different for each test case.
Ah.
So we have three different mutations that we are trying.
Can you maybe, if they're different for each test case, would it make sense to put them in the respective test cases?
Yeah, definitely. So, but I could still write it in here with mutation and variables and then set the mutation and variables in the test case.
Whatever's most easier for you. I'm always like struggling. Where should I put lengthy code? Should I put it in the variable and put everything in the top first lines, or should I put it in the test case and define it there? I think most of the time I define it in the test case because I believe that, or I'm assuming that the developer who's going to read the test case is also going to read the mutation in the test case and doesn't want to scroll up, but it doesn't really matter, really. Like, you can do whatever you like.
I think I prefer it like this. I think it's good.
Yes, good. So create social media, and it does create social media. Yeah, you give it a URL and you want to get the ID and the URL back. I think that's an amazing GraphQL query there.
I stole it from somewhere.
You shouldn't have told me.
I'm really not, I do front-end development usually.
Yeah.
I want to look into this, but don't ask me how to write a GraphQL query. I have no idea.
Oh, well, actually, if you do front-end development, you would write a GraphQL query. I mean, that's like the query that you would write from the front end and send it to the server.
Yeah, true. But I haven't worked with GraphQL.
Yeah, it's amazing technology. I really like GraphQL now. I fell in love with it. Kind of. My girlfriend is already jealous. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting used to it.
Yeah, it's like amazing. Recently in the bus, like I met some guy who also does software development, and he was asking me we had like a long talk about GraphQL, and I think I said to him, like, there's no reason why you would not use GraphQL, but there are maybe scenarios where GraphQL cannot really where you don't feel the advantages of it. For example, if you have server-to-server communication, then you don't get so much out of GraphQL, but it still doesn't hurt to have it. Like, it is not worse in any way than REST. If you ask me, I couldn't see any example where really REST is better than GraphQL. It's just GraphQL is, I think, more complex. Maybe that's a disadvantage. You have to learn more. Like, REST is pretty straightforward and very simple. And GraphQL is maybe you have to learn a little bit more, but once you get into it, why not?
Yeah, I'll let you know what I think in a few months.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Okay, so where are we?
I still see is logged in on line number 58.
Yeah.
So that's like your query. You will probably want to remove that. So, oh yeah, and Matt is always like telling me I should give it a proper name. Like this whole block, this action is a method that you can call later on in your test case.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt really likes if I don't call it action, but if I call it something related to the test case. So social media action, maybe in this case. And we cannot call it create social media action because it's not always creating social media.
No.
Sometimes it's also updating social media, right? So maybe just social media action, line number 48. Of course, you also have to define, update the line where you have defined action.
I haven't actually.
Oh. Yes.
So I guess it's a good moment to do it.
Yes.
Okay, but now what?
Then you still have on line number 58, this is logged in, which is not your query. And this will be different now. You could now give that a variable that you put in as a parameter to social media action. Like on line number 48, if you want, I would do it that way. You could put, yes, exactly, yeah, there you can put in a parameter that you would then later on use on line number 58. Because this is what changes in every test case, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now choose like a beautiful name and then.
Okay, but so what I need is the mutation at the variables. And I already defined them up here without giving them a value.
Oh, yeah, right.
Add the value in each test case. So like here, variable for mutation.
Yes, then you can also rename is logged into mutation. But then it's probably not a query anymore, right? I guess create test client also has something called mutation. Now I think this is the time where we have to check Apollo server testing.
Apollo server testing.
Yes, that's like the framework that gives us create test client, which in turn gives us query. Integration testing, that's the one. And
create test client, that's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing, and it returns
query
and mutate. And I guess it's
mutation needs
just a mutation.
Mutation and variables. Cool.
I wonder what Hugo is doing now.
Did he come back or?
Variables? No, I can see like you see like a profile picture, and it's just the two of us. I just post it in this community, and sometimes people show up, and sometimes not. It depends.
Yeah.
It's like a spontaneous thing. Well, this looks amazing. Like on line number 58, you return a promise, which is amazing. And if you would run social media action in your test case, then you can wait for it and wait for it to resolve or to reject and expect a particular response from the server. I think it's amazing. Yes, factory clean database. Well, this is clean database is really just removing, like wiping out the database. You can keep it in there if you want.
But do we have to do something like this for the Apollo tests as well? Or is this just relevant for the old setup?
This whole factory thing comes from the old setup. If you want to look up the definition of clean database, it's just really sending one statement to the database, please remove everything. And so probably we will still have something like that. Maybe like clean database might be the only thing that survives from the old setup, because You could also use the Neodi instance and write a cipher statement to wipe out the database. But yeah, doesn't really
I'll
matter.
just leave it like this for now.
Yeah, you can just keep that. Create social media. So you have variables, and that's just the URL. Where does the URL come from?
That I'm defining up here because I'm using it in every test case.
Pippi Langstrumpf, beautiful. And yes, so URL is fine. Then you can name it variables. Hopefully variables is already defined. And then you have the mutation, which you define there. And then what? That's just the before each, where you define variables and mutation. Fair enough. So
Yeah.
you don't have anything in the database, like there's no user, no creator. Hopefully that's correct. So far, do we set up a user in this social media action? No, we have no user. We just have the user, but it's not yet defined, which
Yeah.
we wanted, right? We want to check the test case, what happens if users
We don't feel right.
Mhm.
So in this case, for unauthenticated, we don't have to do anything.
Exactly. So like client GraphQL, well, in this case, I would still remove line number 84. And on line number 85, remove client request with, what was it? Social media action.
Social media action.
And mutation of variables is already set.
Yeah. And we still expect it to
Yes.
go not authorized.
And I think mutation of variables is, you wrote social media action in a way that it doesn't expect parameters, or does it?
True. So
yeah, this should be good. Actually, do you want to give it a test right now?
Yes, I want to.
You can, with the parameter -t, you can specify the description. So you could, for example, unauthenticated, like -t, and then quotation marks unauthenticated, and then this will only run this particular test case.
Okay, do I put it in the file or just
on the terminal? Like you would say yarn run jest. That's running the jest without the old setup.
Yeah.
Then you give the file name, and then you give -t, and then the name of the description.
And the file name. Schema resolvers.
Mm-hmm.
And then
-t. I don't know what T stands for. Maybe test. Mr. T, maybe. I don't know. And then just unauthenticated. And this should be it. Like, I don't know if you have to put in quotation marks or not, but let's try out. One failed. How many skipped?
it skipped. I think there are 3 tests for all the 3 cases: create, update, and delete.
So maybe this with the -t didn't work out because it ran everything.
No, but this one should. No, update, no. Create, this is the new test.
So from the description, you see this.
Yeah.
Do you see the symbols with the red cross? This means failed. The circle means skipped.
Yeah, but we have 3 tests that are.
Ah, yeah, right. Which has all this in the name.
3.
So then it's expected.
Yeah, the problem is that we didn't import.
Create server is not defined. Yes, so we have to import that one.
We have it here somewhere.
Yes, we probably have to add
A few
some dots to it when we put it there. Yes.
Is that
I think it's in there. Yeah, I think that's it.
okay? Let's try again. Still failing.
I wonder why it's making a request to 4.123. Like 4.123 is the CEDA server, and
Yeah, but that's the wrong test. I think we haven't changed that yet.
okay.
I'll create test client, of course.
I think you can also, let's try another one. If you, behind the file name, if you add colon and then a number, this number is treated as like a line of code. So if the line of code matches with the test case, then you run just this test case. Like in this case, 85. 84 is the describe, 85 is the it, and the it is the test case.
Or just colon.
Colon 85. Yeah, it should be like that. I don't know. I'd never tried it with Jest because the line of code usually. Okay, so it doesn't work. There are other test runners where this works. For example, Cucumber.js expects that, but apparently Jest doesn't. Most of the time, it's not that useful because if you change something, it will get a new line of code, and then yeah, then you don't get any tests anymore. So. Well, this looks amazing. Resolve to value, create social media null, cannot read property session of undefined. This is interesting.
Huh.
So the Apollo server is behaving in a little bit different than the GraphQL Yoga server that we used before. If it has an internal server error, it still resolves and sends like a data object back to the client, and then in the message telling it, okay, something was broken on my side.
Okay.
And so right now it's telling you cannot read property session of undefined. And we have to look into the resolver now where we have session. Yeah. I mean, we are the context, right? So the context has just the user right now, which is undefined, and context.driver will be null. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So we have to look into server.js and have a little bit like looking into it and see. So in here we have driver. So that's what like the real implementation of context. Like we have user and then await decode and then request headers. By the way, this request headers, that's the one that we don't have in Apollo server testing, because the request headers comes from Express. And Apollo server testing doesn't know anything about Express, and it doesn't, like, you would have to mock the request headers, and then it would also need to be a real JSON Web Token. And for testing, it's all a little bit too complicated if you just want to give it like a user. So we just omit that. But yeah, now we return the user, but we still have to return the driver, because in your resolver, you're creating a session from the driver. So driver is coming from there. It's like get driver, and get driver is coming from Bootstrap Neo4j.
So we actually do that to make the test work.
Yes, exactly. So we mock a couple of things, including the database connection, which is used by the server. Like we have our Neode instance, which has its own driver instance. And in order to make the server work, like in order to let the server have a database connection, we give it a connection.
Should I also define it right up here?
Yes, you can do that. It doesn't really matter where you define the database instance, like driver, and then get driver. And it just put that into the context. And then run the test again. Is the location, the import location, correct? Probably you have to add more dots. No?
We already had the Neode.
Ah, nice.
So
Good.
just added get driver.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect.
Let's
now,
try
but does it make sense, like what we do here?
Yeah, it does.
And it's a good sign that we get this error, right? Because we hit the resolver.
What now? Is session. No, that was the last one.
Cannot read property ID of undefined. Another error. Okay.
ID of undefined.
So where in the resolver do we have an ID? We have the ID in context user.id. Ah, yeah, right.
And we haven't defined the user.
We have defined, yeah, right. Absolutely.
But that was on purpose.
Yeah. So what we could do is we can have another before each and then define an empty user object maybe. Because then it's not undefined, it's just empty. And then you get ID and ID is not there. Ah, but now we get in another problem, right? Because we have, in the resolver, we're expecting to having reached through the permission middleware already. No? Now I'm already a little bit confused. So the question is, if we are not authenticated, why do we reach this resolver here? Because we should, like the permission middleware should already at an earlier stage said you're not allowed to create social media if you're not authenticated, like if there's no user in the context.
That's right.
So the question is, why do we don't reach the permission middleware? And now I would again have a look to server.js and see where do the middlewares get added to the server. So the middlewares gets added on line number 34. So it should be all right. Now I really don't understand why this doesn't work. Can you add in permission middleware, just make a console statement or something and see if we hit the permission middleware?
Yeah, if I find it.
Middleware and then permission middleware. So there's somewhere down below there should be create social media, like it's like the permission matrix, where we define who's allowed to do what. And there's create social media, and it's authenticated, and is authenticated is a rule, which is somewhere defined.
Up here.
And look at that, we found a bug. So we're checking if context user is anything but null. And in our test case, what is the value of the user? Is it null?
I'm not sure. Wait a minute. We haven't defined it, actually.
Exactly. So it is?
I don't know.
Undefined.
Good point.
And this is now where I really hate JavaScript, because JavaScript has these two null values. And I absolutely hate that it introduced two distinct null objects, undefined and null. Like, it's not the same thing, but it's almost used like as a synonym. And in this is authenticated rule, we're checking for null only, where we want to check if it's undefined or null, or just anything which is not falsy.
Is user always an object?
It can be anything, like whatever you give it. Like it is probably null. Yeah, I think this, if you look into the implementation of where user comes from in server.js, where we decode the like the JSON Web Token, if that fails, and if the JSON Web Token is not valid, like open server.js, on line number 24, you can see that user is coming from await, decode, driver, and so on, so on. Decode will always return object or null. Yeah. Okay. So now we introduce with a test case. That's the first time where we have this case that this user is undefined.
We define the user
because we define the user. I would say we should change if authenticated. It should always take undefined into account, like a null or undefined. And I always forget how to properly test for is is falsy.
I
And
think maybe we could do it like this.
yeah, so this makes it true if it's a string. No, so wait. Empty object will be true now. Empty string will be false, not true. And 0 will also be true, because 0 is evaluated to false. Really, it's JavaScript.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense at all. It is a mess. Yeah, I think even empty array is false. You can try it out in the browser. Just open a browser, open JavaScript console, and add exclamation mark. Did you ever program in a different language than JavaScript?
I got started with Android years ago, so some Java.
Yeah, I started with Python and Ruby, and it's so much nicer there, because everything which is not false or null is true, period. Like no exceptions, no unpleasant surprises. Like type in exclamation mark 0 and see what it does. Why? Like, why is 0 false? Like, no. Like, probably it's
Oh,
false.
that's great.
Yeah, empty string is also false. What
Okay.
about empty array?
Can I just put it like that?
Oh, that's true. Fair enough. And empty object?
I'm sure it's true.
Yeah, this should be true. Yeah. Yeah, but there's so many pitfalls. So I would actually.
Okay, but could we check if it's of type object, or do we not care about what the user is? Because if we know that user is always an object, or should always be an object.
We could probably test if it has an ID, maybe. Yeah, if we don't want to use something like Lodash is falsy, then I would probably use context user && context user.id. That should do it. Because if it's an empty object, that will be false, which might be even better. What do you think? Empty object, what should it be, false or true?
I'm not sure what we're doing with this, but actually, do we always send a user ID?
Yeah, so user must be in the database, and if it's in the database, it must have a primary ID. In this case, it's even called ID.
Then let's check for the ID.
Yeah, that was what I was saying.
Yeah.
Like, that's the bare minimum. So congratulations, you fixed the bug.
Yay! Okay, so that means that this should now.
We should now get our authorization error next time.
Still filming.
This is update.
It does have.
Yeah, okay, so it is okay. Why does it resolve? It should reject. It resolves and the errors are there. But it's not like really.
It's not rejected.
Yeah. Sad. Okay, I don't really know why it does not reject. Probably it's a configuration issue, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. Like, we are using Apollo server for not too long, and I guess it's like a configuration issue that you see the error, but it's not sending the proper response. Like, it's not rejecting the promise. I don't know if it's a problem or not. You could, in this case, also check that errors should not be empty. Like, you await. So either you replace rejects with resolves, or you are indifferent of the, if you make it resolves, and if we change the configuration later on, we have to change the test again, because then it will reject.
Yeah.
But actually, that would be probably good.
I think it would be better.
Yes, I think it would be better too. So then let's remove it with resolves. And it's not throwing anything, but it's like expects to equal. And since we don't want to just for all the attributes, I would say this whatever's in, we can replace the string not authorized with expect object containing, similar to line number 100.
Yeah. Maybe I'll put it on the second line like we did.
Yeah. This will not work, I guess, because the GraphQL is an object. Let's try it out.
Oh, you're right.
It's a double array, like an array and an array, and then
it has an object.
And then it has an object.
So what are we expecting?
We could either expect anything that's not an empty array, like a non-empty array. But let's try it out first.
You mean like this?
Let's run it first and then see what's the error message, and maybe we can really expect an error object or some sort. I don't know.
Okay, I'll check.
Are you getting tired? We can make a break if you want after this. I mean, we're almost there.
I would love to get it to run. Let's see how far we are from it. Update. Errors. Array.
Yeah, it's the string representation of an object, right? Maybe you have something like expect anything of type. I think you can actually do that, like expect n.any, and then you make a parenthesis and then the type. So you say errors, and then you have one array. Yes, empty array first, and then the first item is expect.any, and then parentheses, and there you can put in the class, which would be GraphQL error. You have to import it, I guess.
Okay, where from?
I don't know.
What's it called? GraphQL error?
Without capital Q, just.
Yeah, I think it's not case sensitive, so.
Oh. But I think it's coming from a Apollo server.
Fault project. Yeah. Hang on a second.
I think I saw it once. Like, I think it's in Apollo server. Just that.
Where? I don't.
And let's just try it out. Like, just say import. I think we can just guess. It's yeah. So you just say import, and I think it's in like curly brace and then GraphQL error, and then Apollo server. Not Apollo server testing, just Apollo server.
With a big G or?
I don't know. Let's check the terminal.
GraphQL error. It's big.
Yeah, it's big. I mean, we will get an import error if that's not correct. Yes. And then any GraphQL.
GraphQL error.
GraphQL error. There you go. Now let's try it out. Although it's not, we're like not specific enough, right? We are expecting the authorization error, not just any GraphQL error.
True, but actually we would wish for it to reject instead of resolving.
Yeah, that's also true.
Create.
Okay, then we use anything.
Just anything with no error. Like this?
This is like expecting errors not to be empty. Yeah.
Let's try again.
Yeah, you run those tests many times. But honestly, like software test-driven development is the best. It's essential to write sustainable code that is robust, that is also like if anything breaks, there we go, green. Nice. Now, as a last thing, I would actually like to break the test and see if the test really becomes red if we break the implementation. That's called a so-called mutant test. So it's a test of your test. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Because you want maybe the worst thing that it can happen to you if you write a software test is the so-called false negative.
Yeah.
Negative because it's green, like it's not telling you, oh, I'm broken. So it's negative because it's not telling you anything. Like if you think of a test like a medical test, the false negative would be you're ill, but the test tells you you're not. That's like a false negative.
Yeah.
And that's like the worst thing that can happen to you if you write a software test. And in order to avoid a false negative, what we're going to do now is to change the resolver somehow, or maybe the permission middleware even, and then return anything. Like, first of all, they remove the is authenticated from the create social media. That's the first thing. And just make it allow. Yeah. Just allow. And in the resolver, you make like a shortcut and return, what could we return here? Return empty object, maybe?
Up here?
Yeah. So hopefully this will resolve and also make the test red, like failing. Because now we effectively broke the code and we expect the test to tell us. And by the way, this -t thing, I think you can even combine the describe block with the description of the test. So all of them failed, right? As far as I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that. So now congratulations for writing your first backend test.
Cool.
Yeah. Anything and wow. No.
But
no, it's
did
like
get authorized.
it has 2 GraphQL errors.
That's weird.
Oh no. Like, why does it have 2 times not authorized?
I don't know. Why does it have not authorized at all?
I think that's like a default. This GraphQL shield, we use it for the permission middleware. And the GraphQL shield will, if the server has any internal error, it will just throw not authorized by default.
Okay. Yeah, but it can't really be here because we're returning on the first line.
Yeah, I guess it's because if you look into the return object, like GraphQL has this agreement that, for example, create social media probably returns something of type social media. If you look into types / socialmedia.gql, yes, type social media. Okay, it's not there.
There.
Well, user maybe, yeah. Maybe it has create social media somewhere. Just scroll down. Like we defined the the inputs and also queries and mutations here.
Here.
Yeah, so this is of type social media, and the social media type is also somewhere in this schema. Maybe it's easier if you start the Apollo server and check it out on localhost 4000. Have you done this before?
No.
Like seeing the final GraphQL schema? Like it's a big file which has everything. And if you start the backend server, and go to localhost 4000, you get a nice interface which has documentation for you and shows you. Yes, so if you click on schema or docs, like this thing on the right.
Mm-hmm. Which one?
Both of them, it doesn't really matter. Like this is the entire schema, that's like the massive file, which has everything. And the docs is like the interactive, clickable, nice thing for the schema. So here you can find create social media somewhere. This is the query for all social media, but there should be capital C, create social media. That should be also, this is the mutation. So you can see, okay, you give it an ID, you give it a URL. Did you try to, why does it have an ID? I thought you just give it a URL.
Yeah, that's what I just defined in the schema, in the model.
In the model? Like the models of Neo4j, like that's not exposed to the outside. Like that's just server internal.
Okay.
And the create social media should not have an ID usually. And maybe because we should still use Neo4j GraphQL.js, and this is an automatically generated query. So, yes, must be, because it has not an exclamation mark. So it's optional. You can give it an ID, but you don't have to. That means, fine. And if you click on it, on this create social media, then you can see more details about it, like the arguments and the type that is responded with it. And if you return empty object, yes, that's the reason why. You're not supposed to return empty object. You're supposed to return. It should return null. You can return null there, exactly. So in the resolver, instead of empty object, I would return null. That's possible, and then try it out on the backend, maybe, just to see the GraphQL error.
What do you mean?
In the browser, I'm sorry. On the left side, you can write mutation. Did you try out this before?
No, haven't you?
Interesting. Okay, so you have two options. You either write a query or a mutation. And in this case, you want to try out the create social media mutation. So you write lowercase letters mutation, then a space, and then curly brace. So anything which comes next is a mutation.
Okay.
This is like you have two top-level types, query and mutation. And this was one of them. Now you say enter, and you even have autocomplete here. So you can say control space, and it gives you all the options. So you can type in capital C, small r, capital C. Okay, well, create, and then social media. Yes, and then you can give it an input. The input is with normal parentheses, like, yes. And then you can say even again, hit control space, and it will give you all the options. In this case, you give it a URL, probably. Exactly, and then you can give it any URL. Just, I don't know, your GitHub URL, whatever.
Okay, how?
You write a colon and then the URL as a string. I would just copy paste a URL here. Yeah, double quotation mark. Single quotation is not allowed.
Okay.
Yes, and then a URL. I don't know, local for solvent. You can just copy paste from URL window in the browser.
Yeah.
If you're lazy, and I'm always lazy. Interesting that you never tried out this user interface. It's really nice. And now, after the closing parenthesis, you add another curly brace, and that will be the response attributes. Like just behind on line number 2, at the end of line number 2, you open another curly brace.
With a space or not?
Yeah, with a space, I would say with a space. If you're unsure, you can also click on the Prettify tab on the top left, and it will reformat. Once you don't have any errors, the red thing on the left is indicating an error.
Okay.
So you have to ask for some attributes here. So you just hit enter, and then control space again, and then you choose what you want, like maybe the URL or owned by, whatever you like, for example. So this is a valid mutation. Like you created social media, you send this URL to the backend, and you ask the backend kindly to respond with if you create a social media with the URL. You want to get the URL back. That's what you do here.
Okay.
So now you can click on Prettify because it has no errors, and I think you made such a beautiful query that it's doing nothing, because it's pretty. It can't be prettier. Like it's amazing. And if you move that away, exactly, if you move that out of the way and you click this big, nice, catchy play button,
yes,
then you get this null. So this worked.
Awesome.
Right?
Okay, so I'll run the test again.
Yes.
To see if it's finally failing.
Yeah, now we're expecting the test to fail, but we're expecting no GraphQL errors. Because sometimes you get this GraphQL error also if you're returning something that is not supposed to be returned. Errors undefined. Perfect. Perfect. Excellent. Create social media. Yes. Nice. So false negative avoided. And now you can return, like remove, bring the permission back into place, is authenticated, and also remove that shortcut here. Yeah. So there's like a contract in GraphQL. Yeah, the server should never respond with empty object if you have a type. Like you can either respond with null. You're not supposed to respond with undefined. That will also return like throw an error.
Mm-hmm.
If you have empty object, it will also return an error, I think. If GraphQL also wants you to at least request one attribute, like that's the minimum, which makes sense because why would you want to get empty objects? Anyhow. Yeah.
That's good to know.
That's like the magic of GraphQL. And if you do more backend testing, you will absolutely get into it. And yeah. Nice.
Okay.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, that's a perfect test.
Then I'll just try to refactor the rest of them.
Yeah.
And I'll let you know how it goes.
Exactly.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you learned a lot. We learned about GraphQL in general, how to write backend tests, also the dodgy setup, which I apologize for, but that's how it is most of the times. You start to write code and it works, and then you're just happy that you have some tests in place, right? You're first happy that they are reliable, and then they prevent you from having regressions. Like that's the first thing you want. And of course, it would be nice if it wouldn't have such an overhead, and it would be easier to accessible for like beginners.
Yeah.
So you don't have this kind of paperwork where I have to apologize and explain all these things in advance, right? But yeah, this is how it is. It's a real project. It's not not a tutorial from the internet where everything is like beautiful and shiny, and sometimes it's like a little bit. And now you contributed to it. You're refactoring this test, and it's an amazing. It will be an amazing backend test using the new like fashion to like without any dependencies. It's great. It's beautiful.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything more how I can help you? Like more questions, more anything, like whatever you're interested in.
No, that's it. I think I'll just finish refactoring the tests, and then I'm done with the PR.
Excellent, excellent, beautiful, wonderful. Yes, and I probably have some food now. Kind of All right, it was a pleasure, and ask me anytime or any of us. You know Matt already. I think you also paired with Wolfgang. Did you?
No, we just chatted for a moment.
Oh yeah, they are lovely, lovely people, and they're very happy. I think the first time we were in the meeting was this like really in a hurry meeting.
Yeah.
Where we went through all this list, and we had to decide. No, we're not going to do this, and yeah, this is much nicer because I can spend as much time as I want on people.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you so much for your contribution.
Yeah. See you soon.
Yes. Goodbye.
Bye.